We may be solidly in fall, but it's never too early to prepare for winter weather. Ellis County Sheriff Scott Braun stops by to share some safety tips on this episode of the Post Podcast.
You know, our kids want to get out there with those masks on and have a great time, and they should. But, you know, parents, make sure that you're taking your kids, if they're young, to those locations. Walk on sidewalks. Try to get some reflective colors on those, you know, on those young people, and maybe a flashlight if they can't, that they can turn off when they go up to the door so people still don't know who they are. The masks are really the most crucial because although they look cool, sometimes they can't see very well out of them, and that hinders their visibility and their peripheral. And we don't want them to accidentally walk out in front of a car and that type of thing. And, of course, us drivers that are driving have a responsibility to drive slow and to drive carefully during that night because we know there's going to be extra activity. I would also caution, it's kind of a weird world we're living in right now. And back in the day when I grew up, if you remember, there was some things put in candy and things like that, such as pins and razor blades. And I don't know if you remember those times. But now there's much more serious things that could potentially be put in. So I would, as a parent, I would only let those kids go to parents, other parents that they know or families that they know to be safe. And if there's any question about candy, throw it away. Absolutely throw it away. Anything unwrapped that should be wrapped, do not eat it, and dispose of that. And if it's a real concern, contact law enforcement and let us look into the matter if it's really something that just stands out.
Sure.
So,
you know, in recent years, in Hays anyway, I've really noticed that it seems like most folks, where my kids have been anyway, are very respectful of understanding like that concern. And there's, you know, I remember as a kid, we used to get handmade treats. We'd get candy apples dumped in our bags all the day long. But now everybody's, I think, very understanding and cautious of that.
Yeah, the popcorn balls, they don't get served anymore like they used to. And those were great.
Yeah, I miss it. Yeah.
And the caramel apples, absolutely. My mouth is watering thinking about it. So, yeah, just use some caution. Our main thing is we want everybody to have a great time and be safe. And I can tell the kids to be, be over diligent about their safety, but we all know kids. They're out to have a good time, and they run from house to house, and they should. So, but make sure the parents are out there if their kids are young enough and look out for safety. So
Absolutely.
That's our main thing.
Yeah. And as we talked about a little bit, kicking this off, who knows? It might be snowing.
I remember that. I had it snow. They had to cancel it. So
I do too. I tell people that, and I don't think people believe me when I say that. I'm sure it's a little bit more credible coming from you, though.
Oh, I don't know about, but I do remember it because I was devastated. We couldn't go trick or treating. So yeah, it could snow on the 31st. It happened. It's happened before, I'm pretty sure.
I think historically, at some point, we even got snow in September one year, but way before my time.
Yeah, I don't recall that, and I know I'm old, so.
But, what can people do at this point to get ready for that? Because whether or not it's a month, or it's 2, 3, 4, it's coming.
Yeah, it is. And obviously, we'll talk about vehicles a little bit and that type of thing. So, we're getting into that point where you probably should start checking to make sure what you have in your vehicle, such as a blanket in the back. Make sure your antifreeze is to where it needs to be so your car doesn't freeze up. Make sure that you have maybe some food and water. And water is always kind of that tricky thing, because if you leave it in there, it could freeze and could burst. Water is still a good thing, even if it would freeze. At least you have something, and you can eat ice, and it could break it up if you were stranded. The other thing is, because we're so heavily reliant on cell phones, if your car stops, it doesn't mean that your battery may still work, unless depending upon what it is. And so a charger in there may be of great value also. Heat sources in your car, it's kind of a tricky deal, because sometimes cars start on fire when they put them in there. I've heard people put candles in their car. I don't know if that's the best practice. A good blanket, some earmuffs, some gloves, a heavy coat, maybe some coveralls, and some warm shoes will probably go a long way. We're very fortunate that our cell phones don't go down very often, And so more than likely a 911 call will get you mapped right away, and law enforcement will be on their way to get you picked up. Even in the worst blizzards, we will try to make it to get to you to safety. Make sure your car is operational. And one of the other things, even though we're running cell phones, things happen. If you're going to travel a long distance, talk to a family member and let them know your route. And then check in as you're going. Hey, I went by so-and-so, just to let you know, even if it's a quick text, not while you're driving, or a phone call type of thing. So that way we have that time frame. If there is somebody missing, we know that they were here, and we can start our search there rather than completely across the state of Kansas, not knowing where you're at.
Yeah. And in those situations, especially in that extreme cold, like, time is of the essence. You don't want to have a delay.
Yeah. I don't know that you can have too much in your car. Granted, when we have kids, we have a lot of things in our cars and try to stay with your vehicle. A lot of times when people try to start walking, that's when they get themselves in trouble. You still have shelter when you're in your car. It might be cold, but you have shelter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned not having the candles anymore, and I remember that. You were told to have the candle in the can with the sand. They've got those popper hand warmer things now. I keep a few of those in there to kind of as my substitute for that, because I feel like they're probably not going to keep you very warm, but they'll keep you alive.
Well, what they do keep them warm is your fingers and your feet, which is typically what gets cold on most people. And I know from past, I used to hike, and we would take them with us, and I used them several times in the mountain when we got caught in a snowstorm one night. And I'm telling you what, they're pretty nice. So definitely those are a good example of what to carry in there, and that type of thing. But again, keep your phone charged, have a charger within your car. And then when you call 911, stay on it, describe where you kind of are. If you're able to talk with a dispatcher, and just stay with your vehicle, turn on your four-way flashers, and law enforcement. And if it's that bad, National Guard, we've had to deploy them before, where they will run out because they've got a little bit better equipment than we do sometimes for those types of situations, and they will respond too. But that's pretty serious when National Guard comes out, and nobody should be out.
Yeah.
So, and if you have questions, you can always give us a call at the sheriff's office, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
I'm curious. There's one thing I'm interested in, and that's the 911 you mentioned. I know we have the text 911 system. If you get yourself in an emergency, you can text in 911. But if you're stuck in a car, and especially I'm thinking in the more rural parts of the county or western Kansas, just in general, does that work? Can you still map that, or should that be a phone call?
No, it will map, and it's fairly reliable. And in fact, even though, and most people probably are aware of this, sometimes you can't make that phone call, but you can send a text, because it takes less. That voice takes up a lot of, I'm going to use the word bandwidth. I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology.
I don't know either. But as far as I'm concerned, it's magic.
But in the radio world that we operate on, it's called bandwidth. And so it takes up more of that, and so it's unable to have those connections where the text a lot of times is able to send through. So either way, and if you're not getting a response, by all means, if you did need to leave that vehicle to make that, and there's a hill right up there, make the phone call and come back to your vehicle, and it'll map it. But don't go for a 2-mile walk, because, man, we know Kansas winds and the snow, it gets really cold really fast. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a lot of that. We do have some people call in on occasion. We're able to locate them pretty quickly, and we get out there and get them warmed up in our vehicles, and then we call a wrecker for them, and we're able to take care of them. Or if it's that bad that they may or may not have went down a road that they probably shouldn't have, which is typically our younger people, we get them out and then take them home, and then we make arrangements to get that pulled out the next day if it's the middle of the night. It's happened more than once. So
imagine that.
But we're here to serve, and we're happy to do that, and we will help in any way. We don't want anybody to end up staying out there too long. So we will do what we want. 911 mapping is an awesome thing, and it's pretty darn accurate. So we can get really close and start looking around. So turn those flashers on.